The Honourable Nathan Guy.
What a terrible time it is at the moment for the Labor Party. Their caucus is divided and bleeding. We're seeing that in the public at the moment. Just this week they've reshuffled a few familiar faces, and no doubt there'll be more of those standing up this afternoon in this general debate. Of course, they still can't reconnect with New Zealanders, and we're seeing that with the leader, Phil Goff's poor poll rating, static around 6%. Mr Goff started off with the apology last year to the Labor Party caucus for all the things, how they'd lost touch when they were in government. And then, of course, the tax bus arrived, came through my electorate, stopped in Levin, about 6 people there, met the bus, and of course now we don't know where Labor stand on a GST increase, because Phil Goff's saying, we're not sure if we're going to repeal GST, but one thing's for sure, we do know that tax will be going up if Labor ever gets in the Treasury benches again. And of course, we had the race speech from Phil Goff, still couldn't reconnect, and what that did was that divided their caucus even more, and we hear now that Labor are against economic growth, and they're in our discussion document to do with mining. Of course, Labor are conflicted on this one because they don't want to see New Zealanders be more prosperous and more wealthy. And of course they're conflicted because they know that the Labor Party was founded on the West Coast, and the West Coasters are very pro in terms of mining. So no one's listening to Labor, Mr Speaker, because in essence they've got no policy. And you think about this great budget that was read by the Finance Minister about 27 days ago now, particularly well received up and down the country, and a real focus on infrastructure. And you think about what this government's doing to do with infrastructure, 7 roads of national significance up and down the country, around our major cities where there are points of congestion. And in my particular area, an expressway proposal from Wellington Airport through to Levin, about $2.2 billion, an $11 billion program for these 7 roads of national significance up and down the country that's going to lift productivity. It's going to boost growth. It's going to reduce congestion. It's going to make these roads a lot safer. And lo and behold, Labor are now out distancing themselves from the expressway through my electorate. They're saying if they ever are lucky enough to get into these Treasury benches, they'll try and stop the expressway. I can't believe that because, they're going to try and stop Transmission Gully. That's part of this expressway. So Labor are going to be on the hustings and my electorate saying they're against Transmission Gully. We know in the 9 years that they were in government, they did very little. They wanted to leave it up to the regional leaders and the mayors to try and fund the deficit on Transmission Gully. Finally, this government has had the guts to come out and say we're going to build Transmission Gully, we're going to improve the productivity into our capital city. That's not what all we're doing, Mr Speaker. We're reforming the Resource Management Act. We're setting up an environmental protection agency that's going to speed up these consents. People will still be able to have their say, but we're trying to reduce that process of red tape. We're investing in rail as well, significantly, $1.6 billion to modernise and extend the network into Auckland City, new stations and electrification. $250 million into Wellington passenger rail, Mr Speaker. New Matangi trains, electrification, double tracking right up into Waikanae, which is fantastic. A Kiwi Rail of investment of $250 million for the turnaround plan to make sure that Kiwi Rail is sustainable going forward. And when you think about what Labor did with their transport focus, which was purely politics, where they invested in Kiwi Rail and they paid close to $1 billion just before the election. Lo and behold, when the valuation comes out and Kiwi Rail, it's worth $400 million, a deficit of $600 million under the previous Labor government to do with rail. And this government is focusing on unclogging the arteries and getting our productive sector moving. The other important thing that we're doing to do with infrastructure is, of course, the rollout of ultra-fast broadband, $1.5 billion. A fantastic budget, well received, 2010 budget, received by New Zealanders with the utmost pride.
Grant Robertson. Mr. Speaker, I don't